Yay, we're live. Okay, great. Thank
All right.
you, everyone. Let me just introduce real quick, Carl, what we're going to do, and then I'll hand it over to you. So, welcome to MAP Family Learning Center live events. Today we have Carl Puglisi giving a demonstration and a workshop that we can all do at home with our voices, with our hands, and with household items. We're gonna get our groove back this year, 2021. I just want to mention one thing real quick. I'm going to share my screen because this is part of something bigger. Massachusetts Cultural Council gave us some funding in order to do this event, and we're going to have 4 more in the future. So let me just press this and you get to see the whole thing. So thank you, Massachusetts Cultural Council, from MAP. And I encourage anyone watching this to check it out later because this, what you see here is Music Blocks. It's our visual programming language for the Music Plus Code classes. And I put in a little algorithm which produces all the different note values, which is something that Carl's going to do today. So I just wanted to say thank you, Massachusetts Cultural Council, for your funding. And now, if Carl, if you can introduce yourself and you can take it away. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. And thanks for coming and thanks for tuning in. Yes, my name is Carl Puglisi. I'm a professional musician in the Boston area, drumming, playing percussion and drum set. Up until the pandemic, I was performing in an African world music group, which was a lot of fun, but due to some personal issues and also the pandemic, I stopped that. So in the last year or so, I haven't been doing as much performing, but I do a lot of teaching still, a lot of it virtual, of course. And I'm interested in a lot of different styles. I studied jazz and world music at Berklee College of Music, and I do a lot of contemporary drumming with rock styles and jazz as well. And so today I would like to start off with, if anyone wants to share any of their experience, whoever's tuning in currently, Nathan and Amy, as we said. If you want, feel free to say a little bit about yourself and how long you've been playing, first name only, and why you're tuning into the workshop. And we can continue from there. Does anyone want to speak up? If not, no problem.
It's Nathan and Heather.
Heather, I'm sorry. I keep saying I got it this time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think I'll speak.
Sure.
Nathan here. So I've been learning guitar since like kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in 5th grade now. Too lazy to count the years.
About 4 or 5.
Yeah. And is there anything else I have to say?
What brings you to the workshop? Any specific interests in the rhythm?
It's like music in general.
Just to expand your knowledge as a musician? That's great. Yep. Cool.
Like just modern day music.
Nice.
Basically,
Yes.
what you find in video games.
Great. Is Heather also there?
Yeah, she is, but she doesn't want to.
That's fine. No problem. Great. All right. So I was going to start off with the basic, I call it I guess it's the rhythmic hierarchy of notation, starting from the biggest note, whittling it down to smaller notes and how they're fractioned out. And if you have any questions along the, throughout the workshop, even in the beginning or any time, I guess you can just raise your hand here if anyone has any questions. So, because I don't want to, if there's any confusion in the beginning, it's going to be very basic, but it'll probably progressively go into something more challenging depending on the aptitude here. So I want to make sure if anyone has any questions that I know about it, so I'm not, getting into concepts that are beyond, the understanding level. So if I guess they can do that by sending something in the chat or raising their hand, I'll be able to see it. So feel free to do so. And as is often stated, if you have a question about something and you're afraid to ask, sometimes that question, if you think it's not a very, you think it's a dumb, there's no dumb questions is what I'm saying. So sometimes you might be asking the question for someone else who's too shy to ask it. So I encourage anyone, even if it's something very small or you might think is very basic, to ask it anyway. Okay. So I'm going to start off. You can see, I'm going to share the screen a little bit. So what I did in the links that were sent contain a Google Drive folder, and it has one of the, let me just go in here first and share what I'm talking about first. Chrome tab, let's see, we're going to do, everyone should be able to see this, right? Here you have where my cursor is. You see songs for rhythm workshop. There's a chart here we'll get to later, maybe even at a future session. Then labeled, these documents are labeled A through E. Basic notation. I'm sorry, the A is the note tree breakdown. Then B is basic notation. C is syncopation. Another syncopation is the letter D, and then the dotted and tied notes. So we're going to start with this A. Let's see. This is the note tree, okay? And I'm going to demonstrate some things on the dry eraser board that I have behind me as well. So if anyone can download that or have it as an extra tab to follow along, feel free to do so. Let's see here. Let me go back to here. And what I'm going to go through just basically how everything's broken down with the very basic beginning whole note. All right. So we're all on the same page, and I have to make sure that I have my marker, which I had here a minute ago. Dry eraser marker, which may not be here. Let's see. Anyways, I had a marker here, and I just looks like I may have misplaced it. Oh, it's right here. Sorry. There, you got it. You got it. All right. So make sure this is up here. Everyone can see this. So in the very when they say we're going to deal with the whole note first, which I'm sure you probably both know what that is, and I just want to describe what's going on so we can understand the notes that follow. So when they say whole, they mean whole measure, right? So usually you have a measure, and the common time signature is 4/4. I'm sorry, and it's also written like this. You'll see sometimes a C, which is common time signature. All right. So when you have a whole note, you have 4 beats that whole note takes up. Okay, because everyone could see that so far. Yep. Cool. So if you're playing a guitar, you would, whatever the chord is, let's say it's a chord or a power chord, two notes, or a chord of 3 notes, you would, or just 1 note, you would just strum that string and let it ring out for 4 beats. If you play a clarinet, you blow that horn for 4 beats. And internally, because let's say you're blowing a horn, you can't really count at the same time as you're playing like you can with a piano or guitar. You'd say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and while you're holding that note out. Okay. If you're striking an instrument like a percussion instrument like myself, it depends on what the instrument is. If it's a cymbal, you'd strike the cymbal, and it would sustain until you decided to let it ring out until it fades out, or you could actually clutch the cymbal, which I can demonstrate in a minute. And if you're playing another percussion instrument like a xylophone, you would strike the beat 1 and let that note ring out. And when you have the freedom to do so, you can muffle the note after those 4 beats, or sometimes often is the case where you have other notes after that. You don't have the availability to muffle a note, and the next notes that would follow the whole note would kind of just cover up the fading original note that you struck. So everyone understands that. If I clap this 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and that whole note takes up the entire measure. You can't fit anything else in that measure if it's 4/4 time. Okay. So I think everyone understands that, but let me just demonstrate the whole basic whole note, and we'll get into the half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, and we'll show musical references as well. So if I am striking, like I said, my cymbal, I would get this music stand out of here. Hit this cymbal. Everyone can hear that, and I would, if it rings out, sometimes you probably can't hear it as it's fading out, but 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And I'd hold it right there. So by the time the next beat 1 comes around, you're not going to be able to hear that cymbal. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. But as I said before, a lot of times there's rhythms coming in after that, which, you know, doesn't allow for the availability to be able to mute something. But technically, if you had the time in what you're playing to do so, you would mute it. There's an instrument called a vibraphone in jazz where we let a note ring out and then you'd mute it with a mallet sometimes. But even then, sometimes you can't mute everything. There's only so much going on with your mallets. I mean, there's so much going on with your mallets, you can't always mute everything. But in some ballads or slower music, you would mute things, certain tones, so they're not becoming too conflicting with other notes that are coming on. So in the xylophone I have here, we're going to see if you can bend this down a little bit, and you'll see that this is, I'm just going to hit this, strike the letter F. I'm sorry, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's going past the 4 beats, so I'd have to muffle that if I had the availability to do so. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then mute it on 1. Okay. But like I said, many times you're playing notes after that, you don't have the luxury of being able to mute everything. So everyone understands the whole note, I'm assuming. Whole, again, is 4 beats. So if we had a half note, we would understand that half of 4 is 2. And we'd strike 2 beats. All right. So got to remember not to keep losing this dry eraser marker I have there. Must have dropped it again. Anyways, let me get to that in a minute. When you have a half note, it looks just like a whole note. Here it is. Velcro it to my hand. Let me erase this whole note. And the cool thing about this is I can also show you some notation basics that some of you may or may not know about. So if the whole note takes up 4 beats, again, you can look at that workshop sheet that has the hierarchy of notes, which shows the breakdown of whole note to half note. The next one is half note. And the half note looks like just like a whole note, but you have a stem. It's called a stem going upward. Sometimes you'll see the stem going down, which it's also half note, but depending on where the note is in the music on the staff, they might put the stem downward. If that's the case, it's still the same value, but the stem is on the left side going down versus the right side going up. So either case, half note looks like this. And if it's 2 beats long, that one takes up 2 beats, and then you could fit 2 half notes in there in the measure of 4/4, right? You can also fit 1 half note and 2 quarter notes, which we'll get to later, or 4 eighth notes or 8 16th notes. Again, each one lasts for 2 beats. So if I were to strike this, I'm not going to go through everything again because I want to save time, but if I were to play a half note, just clapping it or striking an instrument like a cowbell or something, it'd be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 half notes in the full measure. It's very similar, but not exactly, and we'll get to this later, to if you had a quarter note with a quarter rest after it and another quarter note with a quarter rest after it. So this is the same idea. So a quarter note is 1 and then you have a rest on 2 and, which is a quarter rest. Quarter note, 3 and a quarter rest on 4. So it's quarter because it's a quarter of a measure. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4 of a measure. Okay. I could have put 4 quarters in there. I could put 4 quarter rests, 2 quarter notes, 2 quarter rests, and and consecutively. So I could also do quarter note here on beat 2, and then the rests after it. So I'm just going to keep the stems down. So any combination of 4 quarter notes and quarter rests, as long as it adds up to no more than 4. If anyone has any questions so far, just tune in with a chat. Or raise your hand, which you can do digitally here. But I'm assuming everyone understands that. Again, a whole note, the half note would sustain for 2 beats as opposed to being cut off after beat 1 with a quarter note and a quarter rest. Then we have the quarter notes full. So again, 4, 1, 2, and just to show you that it's the same value, you could do quarter notes with stems down here. You have 1. What I usually tell my students when they're counting is to count the ands in between the beat. That way, when they get to 8th notes or something more complicated, they have more reference points to go by to understand the rhythm more clearly. If I have some students that don't count the ands, sometimes they'll truncate or play, a note that follows the note they're on too early or too late. Okay. So this keeps everything even. So you're really counting, if you can, you subdivide 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and the plus sign being the and then you're, in this case, again, 4 quarter notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay. So what I'd like to do right now is, the people are on the call, Heather and Nathan, is that right? So are you both sharing the same video from the same location?
Yeah, they're both in the same location.
Yeah.
Okay, that's convenient. So what I'd like to do is, if since there's going to be a delay, I can count you in, but you guys might start a little later, at least from my perspective. So what we could do is, just to make sure we understand how to perform all these,
Yeah.
we're just going to go through whole notes. And I could have said this earlier, but even if you had your instrument and you wanted to demonstrate on an instrument just the sound, you don't need to share the video, but it's up to you. But we could just try at least first clapping the whole note. But what I'd like you to do is count it while you're saying it. Can you do that? So what let me do it first, just to demonstrate, so you understand. It's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right?
Simple enough. Yeah.
All right.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.
Good. Heather, you want to try it?
She's actually in the bathroom at this moment.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, good. So now we got a whole half note and half note. Let's try those, Nathan.
1 and 2 and.
Do the whole measure though, so you're going to see 2 of them in there, right?
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.
Perfect. It's coming through loud and clear too. Nice. All right. Excuse some of the penmanship here. I'm just to save time. You got 4 quarter notes in there, right? You want to try that?
Yeah. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.
Okay, so now we can actually start moving, as long as Heather is on the same page, and you can consult with her to make sure she understands what's happening.
Yeah, she should know.
Okay, I figured. All right, so now we can start moving into what would be the next note broken down. That would be what exactly. So have you you've obviously played eighth notes, and you know what broken eighth notes are? Maybe you don't know the terminology, but an eighth note that's broken would be like an eighth note followed by maybe an eighth rest.
Oh, okay.
You familiar with what the eighth rest looks like?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, cool. So that's when they say broken eighth notes. They're just like not eighth notes that are consecutive, which means one after the other. So let's get into the eighth notes. I'm gonna just neaten this up a little bit. So in the place of 2 quarter notes, you can have 4 eighth notes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have 1, and there's that and syllable we were counting. So now you have 4 eighth notes in the place of the 2 quarter notes. And you'd clap those like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Great. So if you guys understand, and then again, it could be any combination. I could put the quarter note here on beat 1, which takes up the 1 and, because it takes up a full beat. Again, 1 and would be a full beat right there. And I could put.
Carl?
Yes, go ahead.
Are you like sharing your screen?
Yeah, you know what? I'm sorry. I keep thinking I was, and I was not. Let me do that. I am. Can you see my screen?
No, I can't.
You can't see the dry eraser board?
No.
Well, we can see your dry eraser board. I think that Nathan thought you were talking about like your computer screen.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking that, yeah, I actually got.
No, I can't see his like dry erase board either.
Oh, you can't see the dry erase board. Huh. Nathan, maybe you can leave and then come back in, because I can see it pretty clearly.
I'll do that.
Yeah, I don't see your view. The screens of, what do you call it?
Well,
Your face.
mine's off.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah, but you should be able to see the dry eraser board.
We'll just have him come back in.
Sure.
Can you see it now, Nathan? You're muted right now.
No, actually, for some reason. I don't know why.
Huh.
Trying to figure out what
You're able to see it, Devin. You're able to see it, right?
Yeah, I can see it. Nathan, can you see my me?
No, I can't.
You can't.
It says
Huh.
your camera is off.
Huh, because my camera is on.
Can
So-
you see me?
No, your camera.
Oh, now I can.
Now you can.
Now I can see it.
Okay. So does it mean like if we don't see him, he can't see us?
Well, that's not usually.
Now I can see you.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it
We'll figure
works
it
out.
Awesome. That makes me feel better. That'd be a little bit of a glitch. All right. So now you can see the rhythm that I wrote down there. Actually, I'm missing. I just was showing you like another alternative to the pattern we were doing. What I wrote down was 4/8 notes followed by 2 quarter notes. Now I'm writing just different combinations of the same idea. So I'm getting a little sloppy here.
Okay.
So we have now a quarter note followed by 4/8 notes followed by another quarter note. This is just an example of how different combinations of quarter notes and 8 notes, as long as they don't exceed 4 solid beats in a 4/4 measure, you're good, with any combination, which if anyone has any questions on that, we can talk more about it. So this rhythm, Nathan, you want to try clapping and counting this rhythm if it's clear enough to you? Did you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could just
Yeah, I can.
see if you can count it at the same time so we can hear where you're at.
1 and 2 and 3 and I think it's cut off on my end. So.
All right, can you see it better now?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.
Perfect. Ideal. Yep. And Heather, at any point, if you're listening in and you want to try any of these rhythms, feel free to chime in. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
she's right.
All right. So,
Did you say that Heather wants to try?
would you like to try it, Heather?
I said she's very shy.
Oh, that's fine. Okay. I'm not going to, but I don't want to neglect anyone, but at the same time, I respect people's, shyness or privacy as well. So let's, if any time you want to try it, just chime in. So when it comes to, I just think I'll mention this. When it comes to percussion instruments, a lot of times when I was studying jazz, we talk about long notes and short notes. So when it came to syncopated patterns, which we'll get to soon, those would be considered, if there were 8th notes, they'd be considered short notes. If they're tied 8th notes, they'd be longer, which we'll get into soon as well. Or quarter notes, or anything bigger than a quarter note. So a quarter note, half note, and a whole note would be bigger than 8th notes because the 8th note is just 1/8 of a measure or a half of a beat. Long notes would be, maybe you consider them to be like ta, and then the short notes would be TT, something I remember hearing in grade school. I usually don't count it like that, but my point is that if you played a long note in certain exercises that we'd play as drummers, we might hit a long note source, which would mean like a voicing. Let's say it's a floor tom, which rings out more, or a bass drum and a cymbal at the same time, which would be a note that's just a longer note sound that kind of correlates to another instrumentalist maybe that's playing in the group. So if someone's playing, or I should say, let's say there's a big band and they're doing these hits like da 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 da, you'd consider as a drummer which notes you might play on instruments that would have a shorter decay, which means that the note doesn't sustain very long, or a longer decay, which means like a cymbal crash, it just takes a while for it to die off. So these would be considered, like a quarter note might be slightly a longer beat, and these would be short, long in this case. All right. So again, quarter note, 8th note, 8th note, 8th note, 8th note, quarter note. So we could do what I was going to try to do here is, we may as well do it now. If you wanted to do something, I was talking with Mr. Devon when we did a preliminary tryout of this class, to maybe tap something that's a little bit more thuddy, like maybe your chest or your stomach, and then you can clap a shorter note. So if we wanted to try doing like a long, short, long, that's something we can try practicing. It's a little bit more of a coordination challenge, but if you wanted to do that, or you can clap on your lap. So you're sitting down like I am, you can hit your knee or your quads where your leg is, and then so it's kind of a slightly lower pitch. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You want to try that, Nathan?
Okay.
Just give that a shot.
So is there a rhythm?
Just use
That
it. Can you
rhythm
do the
again?
screen again?
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.
Yep, exactly. So it's just good to be mindful of that. So when you're playing an instrument, when it comes to maybe in your case a guitar, you might mute certain things and not mute them. Mute other notes. This is probably not the best example. A better note, and I'll show you this in a minute. I'm going to have to raise the screen up. A better example might be like a half note, which again, you might let that ring out, and then you'd have shorter notes. You could probably get this at a later time actually too, but you know, you'd again, I'm not a guitarist, but you know, this would be, you'd ring this out, beat 1 and 2 and half note, 1 and 2 and then short, short, long, you know, but really the longest note's obviously the half note. So you have 1 and, let me get this pen out of the way, 1 and 2 and 3. I'm sorry. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay. It's probably not as applicable to other instruments as it is to drums, because when it comes to your guitar or clarinet or whatever you might be playing, you might not consider melody notes as much as you do with drums or something you're striking as a percussive instrument, where you have to kind of think of long notes and short notes versus how long you blow a horn versus how long you strum or mute the guitar. But it's something I just thought I'd mention. What I should do is let me just see the we did all the 8 notes. Let's just briefly go through the rests, so everyone's clear on the rests equivalents to these note values. So when we have a staff of 5 lines, I promise it gets a little bit more interesting very soon after I get into this. So normally you see a staff like 5 lines, and when you have a whole rest, I believe it's on this line, it's dragging, it's hanging from the 4th line up from the staff. So this would be like a whole rest. Okay, so this is the same value as the whole note, only you're not striking anything. So we're going to get to a song in a minute where part of the introduction to that song has this every other measure, pretty much, for basically the main rhythm. It's a whole note followed by a whole rest. So that's 8 beats total. But in this case, it's 4 beats, just like a whole note. You strike the whole note, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or strum your guitar out, or play the piano key and you hold it down for 4 beats. And at this point, there'd be silence. You'd just be waiting for other instruments to play along with, you know, perhaps in the next measure. So that's a whole rest. Everyone is familiar with that, I'm assuming. The half rest is very similar looking, but it sits on top of the middle line instead of hanging below. Okay, so I always think of the whole note as a heavier. It's more value. The whole note's 4 beats, or the whole rest, I'm sorry, is 4 beats. So I think of it, since it's kind of more value and it's heavier, you kind of think of it as hanging down from the staff, versus something that's lighter, is 2 beats, is sitting on top of the line of the staff. So this is a half note. You could fit another half note here, which would take up beat 3 and 4. I should have just left those numbers there. Or that could be replaced with 2 quarter rests or 4 eighth rests or so forth. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. Then we had, which I wrote down an example before, is, I'm just going to get rid of this to clean things up. You understand the value of the rests for whole and half. We have the quarter rest, which looks something like that. And you could fit 4 of those in the measure. And then the eighth rest looks like a little 7 with a curl or a curved top part. So that's an eighth rest. So in this case, an eighth rest only takes up a half of a beat. It would either be 1 or the and, but only one of them would not take up both of that. It would just be either the and of a beat or the downbeat. So the downbeat is considered the number. The upbeat would be the and. So you could fit, technically, it would only fit half of a beat. You could put another note, like an eighth. Again, I could put the flag down instead of up. You'd strike 1 and, okay? So another thing to keep in mind, since we were just dealing with eighth notes that were connected, this is an eighth note, assuming everyone can see this. And another way, let me just write the stem. You're more often going to see an eighth note written like this, but I was just showing you the stem could also go down. This is the stem. This is the flag. An eighth note takes up half of a beat, and we have to put a flag, one flag there to describe or to decipher which is an eighth note versus what a quarter note or a whole note is. So I'm just going to go through that again. If you had if you had a half note, half note would have a stem going up on the right side or down on the left side. A quarter note would be the same thing, only filled in. which would be 1 beat, as opposed to the half note, which had 2. An eighth rest looks like that. Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did I say eighth rest? I meant eighth note. Okay, it's an eighth note, right? That's one single individual eighth note. If I had 2 eighth notes together, this is when you see them bracketed, connected like that with a beam. Okay. So this is the same value. The 1 and is the same value as this. Okay, 1 and. It's just they bracket them together when they can, often the times, and then we'll get into other reasons why. Even if they're sometimes there's 2 eighth notes connected together. I should say if there's an eighth note that you think could be bracketed to another eighth note, it may not be because there's something that they call imaginary bar lines, which we can talk about later. So what I'm going to show you before we get into syncopated notes or eighth notes and broken eighth notes, actually, let me just show you a couple examples. So if you had 1 and 2 eighth notes connected together like this, 1 and then you had an eighth rest, that rhythm would be like an example of broken eighth notes. 1 and 2 and. Okay. I can also do an eighth note. It's a little small here just to save space. And then this could be, these are just different patterns of eighth notes with eighth rests in between. This would be 1 and 2 and. 1 and 2 and, right?
Yeah.
Excuse me. So let's see what I was going to say next. Yeah, let me just show you an example of whole notes in music, and I'm going to share something with you. Make sure I'm queued up here. Let's go to screen share, and I'm going to do audio share as well. We're going to do.
If it's a YouTube video, we can do a very high fidelity broadcast. Is it YouTube?
It's YouTube. Yeah.
Can you just put the link in the chat and I'll.
Absolutely. Let me see if I can copy this without.
Otherwise, the sound isn't as good as it could be.
I just have to play it first to get to the right screen where I could share it. 1 second. Yeah, I'll just send this with you. This should be copied. Good.
Nathan, I hate to put you on the spot. Well, actually, I don't hate to put you on the spot, but at the very end, would you like to play something on your guitar?
Yeah, what?
Your choice.
Okay, that could work. Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
Did you get that link I just shared with everybody?
Yeah, I did. It doesn't have the time that I need to be at. Can you just tell me the time?
That's right off the beginning. We're going to start it.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm going to share it now.
Yep. Notes. So in the beginning you hear that the guitar is strumming 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. It happens 4 times, I believe. And after the first 4 measures, it's the whole note again, followed by a whole rest every other measure. So it's like an 8-beat pattern. And I was just kind of showing you how whole notes are used in music. There'll be some other rhythms I'll write out for you in a minute, but we're just going to listen to like the first minute, maybe even 50 seconds or so of the piece.
Okay, I'm going to start it again.
Right from the beginning. And if I count along, I don't know if it's going to be sync in, but maybe I'll just let you guys listen to it first, and then we'll
yeah, actually, I think everybody has to be muted for this to work.
Okay.
I'm going to start back at the beginning.
Certainly. So in the beginning, you guys may remember, since it was seconds ago, we had a whole notes. It happened about 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, so forth. And then it happened where they were doing 4 times. If you could still see the screen here, my dry eraser board. They did the whole note followed by whole rest of just, again, strumming, letting it ring out. So when it's ringing out and they're not muting it, they put this tie over it, the note. So it just shows you that it's sustained and letting it the sound decay on its own. That happened, I think, about 4 times. And then you hear the quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 for about 2 measures. And then when the French horn came in, which I think that was the horn that was being played, bum, 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 bum. That's a rhythm that I could just briefly write out here. 1 second here. Just showing you, like, when you guys are reading music or counting, how easy it is over time to be able to hear music and be able to analyze, at least rhythmically, and because this is what we're working with, would be the case. So again, we have the regular quarter notes, which I'm not going to write, but the rhythm of the drums and the French horn was 1 and 2 and 3. Dun, 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 dun. Boom, 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 boom. So we're gonna do a tied note there, a dotted note there. 2 measure phrase. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and quarter note, quarter note. All right. That happens a couple times. I'll just put a repeat sign there. So 1 and 2, and hopefully this is not too small for you guys to understand what's happening here, the counting. 1 and 2 and 3. Pardon, because of the angle I'm at, pardon the penmanship here, but this is, can you guys see that? I'll thicken these notes up a little bit so they look more authentic. So the horn section is, again, 1 and 2 and 3, and they're holding out that note here, which is a dotted quarter note, and then striking the and to 4. So the first measure of that rhythm, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay? The dot, as you may know, Nathan, do you know what the dotted note, what the dot does to a note? Could you hear?
Yeah, I can. It
Okay,
means that it's basically a quarter note plus a eighth note.
Yeah, basically. So the dot adds another 50% of the value to the note. So if it were a whole note, which takes up 4 beats, and you added a dot after the whole note, it would actually be 6 beats. Okay. If you have a half note, it's 2 beats, 1 and 2 and you put a dot after it, it's 3 beats. So because 1.5 times the amount of the note value. So this is, again, 3 and would be a quarter note. 3 and 4 is that dotted quarter note. Another way of writing this would be if you wrote, well, actually not. You could tie. I'll get into tied notes later, but yeah, this is probably the best way to do it for now. So that's what's happening. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then you have 8 notes again, same as the first measure. 1 and 2 and quarter note, quarter note. Okay. So if you remember the melody, so that song on its own, I could have chosen a million songs, but that's the one that came to me. That not often can you find a song, at least I couldn't, that has a bunch of whole notes in it. Usually there's a lot more, interesting rhythms happening and less whole notes. But usually to introduce something, or if there's a break in the song, there'll often be a whole note. So whole notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, and in this case dotted quarter notes as well was just the beginning of the first main rhythms of that introduction of that song. Any questions so far?
No.
All right, let's see if we could do another. Let's go back to my little. We had this in the song list here. I can show you another. Let's see here. Sorry. I'm just trying to open this document. There we go. Oh, there it is. Sorry. All right. So another song we had an example of was. Oh yeah, this is a Coldplay is a modern rock band. I'm sure many of you heard of. I'm going to share this link with you as well, Devin. Let me just give me a second here. This is something that starts off with a lot of just eighth notes, driving eighth.
Actually, I think I found it. I'm looking at your list.
Good.
But it's just the second one on your list, right? The
Yeah, it's in order. I'm trying to go in order for the best. But we can just play, I don't know, 4 to 8 measures of this. This just as an example of the introduction.
Okay. Hold on a sec. Here we go.
Yep, that's the idea. Basic straight eighth notes. It gets a little more, there's obviously more variation as you go along in that song. Let's see the 1 second here. So may as well get into something a little bit more challenging. So basic notation is one of the documents in the Google Drive folder. What I'd like to do is probably skip ahead just because I think that you guys have a grasp of what's happening here. So there's a document called C, syncopation elements or something like that. It's in the Google Drive folder. You have access to it. Elements V1-P238. These are just different syncopated patterns in combinations of syncopated patterns. If you guys can open to that page, you'll see it, what I'm talking about. Does everyone have access to that now?
I'm putting the link in the chat.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you. So you'll see on the top line, if you're not there yet, just say you're not. But
maybe you can share your screen so that we can all see it.
Yeah, let's do that. There we go. There you go. That's better. Yep. So you have a measure, line 1, the first 4 measures, 2 eighth notes on the first measure, and then followed by 3/4 rests. Again, the count is not written in here, but it's something you can write in pencil if you wanted to, if you printed this out. Second measure, same thing, only they add an eighth note on the end of 4 with an eighth rest on the downbeat of 4, which has to be there if they're going to put an eighth note on the end of 4. Okay. Then the last 2 measures, 2 eighth notes again. So eighth notes on every beat 1 of this measure, 2 eighth notes every beat 1 of this line, I should say. Third measure has a 1/4 note on beat 4, and then the fourth measure has 2 eighth notes on beat 4. So Nathan, would you like to count and clap this line out if all 4 measures, if you're capable or interested?
Yeah.
Give it a shot.
So the first how many measures?
If you want, do all 4 measures, or if you're not comfortable, just do the first 2 measures, whatever you think you're capable of. But we don't need to go more than 4 measures.
1 and 2 and 3 and never mind. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.
Very good sight reading skills. Excellent. All right. So as you'll see down the list, they get slightly more intricate, a little more notes on the in the lines, a little more eighth notes, broken eighth notes with eighth rests in there. But here's a perfect example if you wanted to practice syncopated rhythms with eighth notes and eighth rests. This page would do it. Again, when I was talking about short and long notes, which maybe applies somewhat to more rhythmic instruments like percussion, the long notes would come in. Well, let's see if you're on the first line that Nathan just clapped, beat 4 of measure 3. The second line down, beat 4 of measure 3 as well. You see the core notes in there. And the third line down, you have. So if I were to play, let's play the third line. I'm going to demonstrate the third line. I'm going to clap the short notes, which would be eighth notes or anything shorter, which we don't have anything shorter on this page. In the long notes, I'm going to play on my lap. So in case someone was a percussionist watching this, they can kind of get used to playing or considering if they were playing a drum set, perhaps a longer note source, like I said before, like a floor tom or a cymbal. The quarter note, it's not as long as obviously a half note or a whole note. So the cymbal would still, if you had the luxury again of muting the cymbal, you would still do so on maybe beat 4. I'm not going to do that. I can't really do that on my lap. But for now, I'm just going to clap line 3, short notes with hands, long notes with hitting my lap. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. If you just wanted to do it with one sound source, you can obviously just clap with just your hand. In this case, I'll just do it. Let's go down to line 5. And I'm going to play. This is a very syncopated pattern, or more syncopated, I should say, than the other one. So now syncopated rhythm basically means that some of the hits that you're striking or playing on an instrument would be on the ands or the upbeats. So sometimes if it happens, if there's enough rhythms happening on the upbeats, it almost creates an illusion where the main pulse, or it might be on the upbeat, but it's not. So you have like a pulse happening here. As a matter of fact, this is where I can use the metronome. I'm not sure if it's going to cut through as well. But let me see.
Carl, real quick. So we are at 45 minutes.
Right.
And we will need to wrap up pretty soon. So maybe just one more thing, and then we can continue with syncopation.
Absolutely.
Because we're going to do this again next Sundays, and then the Sunday after that.
Yep. And keep in mind, when we start next Sunday, we'll do a very brief synopsis of what we did this week, but probably 5 or 10 minutes max. And then we'll jump into more technical stuff too. So anyone joining us in future weeks would have to kind of, just recognize that, and they can go back to see the previous class later. So, or prior to, whatever. But let me just demonstrate this last. I think I said I was going to do line 5. I'm going to clap it with a metronome, and the metronome is going to be set to 80 beats per minute. And we'll close it after that. So hopefully you guys can hear that. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I'm going to clap line 5. So again, syncopated pattern. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay. And again, you can go through the rest of these on your own with a metronome, but play it on your guitar instrument, just the rhythms of it, strum it, and practice those rhythms. If they're easier, you can play them at a faster tempo, and they get more challenging sometimes when you're playing faster. So that's it for now. We got a lot to get into in future weeks. If you're interested in if you guys are Nathan, you seem to have a really good grasp of a lot of this stuff already, so it may have been a lot of review, but in the future weeks, probably we'll be getting into some stuff that you're not familiar with. So,
Okay.
Nathan, do you want to play a piece real quick on the guitar?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Maybe
Hold on,
El
let me-
Coyuyo?
Yeah, that will work. Okay.
do you want to do it with video or without? Obviously, it's up to you, but it'd be kind of nice to see.
Yeah, why
If you
not?
felt comfortable.
Oh, Carl, if you can stop your share, screen share, because that kind of spotlights you. Yeah, there.
Okay.
1 sec, sorry. How do I go? I thought I stopped it.
You did.
I did? Okay.
Yeah.
Excellently. There you go.
Oh, really aim this, but
I think, that you can keep it simple, Nathan. I know it's kind of hard to find a good.
okay. Keep it here.
Well, what is El Coyuyo?
El Carrillo is a song.
Doesn't it mean cicada?
Yeah. It's a dance. So let's get playing, I guess.
nice. Yep.
I know that anyone watching that's going to wish they could see your fingers.
Yeah. Maybe next time you could set it up so you could see your fingers, but that was good. Really nice.
Okay.
Any questions?
No questions.
If there's other things that you want to see more of or less of, we could modify future weeks to focus on, as I said to Mr. Devon earlier, focus on things that people might need more assistance or help with. I'm sure it'd help other people as well. So you guys feel free to put some, advice or things, critique about what you might want to focus more on or less of as well.
Yeah. Actually, there's nothing really.
Okay.
I mean, it's like week 1, obviously, so it's
Yeah, it's the basics. Yeah, and we'll next week we'll probably get into more 16th notes, broken 16th notes, tied notes, over the bar line patterns and time signatures and things like that. If not next week, some of that might be the 3rd week, and then we could evaluate maybe next week how much further you want to go with potential 4th or 5th week, as well as I talked to Mr. Devon about previously.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I will say that was a really nice example for whole note, for the who.
Yeah.
So, it's nice to have what one of my teachers called power songs that really exemplify a concept. And so I think I'm going to keep that on my list for whole note, because that sounds great. So I think, thank you for those examples.
Yeah, there's plenty more, as you saw on the list, that I didn't even come close to getting to. But again, I figured we might have to use some of those for the previous, following weeks. So
great. So we'll wrap up here. And thank you again, Carl. Thank you, Nathan and Heather, for attending, and anyone who's joining the live stream via YouTube. And then again, thank you, Malden Cultural Council. And Massachusetts Cultural Council for helping with funding, bringing this event to fruition. And if you want lessons with Carl, you can contact us at info@mapflc.com, and we can get you set up for drum lessons with Carl, which is great. Yeah, and Nathan, you can do it anytime too.
Wait, Devin.
Yeah.
So there's drum lessons now, right?
Yep, he's your guy.
Yes.
So there's like music, art, programming, and drum. Like that was recently added, right? I saw that
Well, see, music has been monopolized by guitar because I'm a guitarist and I'm the person who co-founded MAP. But drums always been part of music. So we've just been trying to find, number one rule is good teacher. Okay. And so Carl's a good teacher. And once we find good teachers in, different areas of each one of those subjects, then we can open it up to the things that they specialize in. So, yeah. So that's a possibility if you want to do that. If you want to, because Nathan does piano and he does guitar.
Wow.
And he sings really well too. And so.
Yeah, I mean, drums and percussion could complement obviously those other instruments that you're playing with, as long as you have the time and the schedule to work at it a few minutes a day per drums. I know you have. The cool thing is that if you're playing something like another instrument and you're working on rhythms with that, you don't have to dedicate the same amount as you might if you're just playing one instrument. You can kind of divvy it up, and a lot of those things kind of overlap. If you're working on melody and rhythm with guitar, it's not going to hurt, obviously, with what we're doing with drum lessons. So that's nice to keep in mind.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So I'm going to end the live stream. And do you want to take it away with something on the drums real quick? Just like
I wasn't preparing that, but I could.
Two bars, and then I'll just end the stream. That would be a great way to end.
2 bars of like just a little drum groove or something?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. How many seconds?
Anything from polka to jazz.
Anything with what? Sorry?
I said anything from polka to jazz. I don't care.
All right. let's see, there's I'll do one of the grooves that I'm working on with my fusion group. It's actually, we're doing a progressive rock band song called La Villa Strangiata, which is Strange Village by Rush. And it was released on their Hemispheres album in 1978. And it's a very interesting instrumental. So I'm just going to play it's a groove. It's in 7/8 time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, something like that. Okay. So I'm just going to play it. Hopefully you guys can see probably a better angle, but we have less time to work with. So I'm just going to do what we got here.
I can see the drums pretty well.
It's just a little improvisation at the end there, but
Awesome. Thank you.
thank you.
Bye to everyone watching the live stream.
Yes. Take care. Have a good day.